as what you want us to specifically focus on?
Not particularly, just want to know what the protocol would be in terms of questioning and things like that. Not necessarily specific questions, but just, will it be just kind of open discussion?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, because we have a great list of questions here for you that you'll be able to make reference to. So this will be your seat here, and you'll have the questions as a guide, and our four cohort members here will be the main people asking you questions. So you will be able to focus specifically on them as you answer your questions, and everyone else will just kind of fall into the background.
Okay, so it's kind of like a little fishbowl.
So we want to make you comfortable in the fishbowl. So, okay, all right. So if nothing else, did I forget anything, team? Okay, all right. So we're going to go ahead and get ready to begin as soon as we get our technology.
I'm done.
Done? Okay, you can have a seat.
Okay, let's see. I'm trying to find out here, but I guess I can guess. No, I'm good. I'm good. I was want to make sure everybody that was visible. That's just that teacher, you know, want to stand. So.
But if you want to stand, you can.
That's okay. I'm good. I'm good.
I think I'll go ahead and start, Mr. Cook.
All right.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Good morning.
We wanted to start off by having you tell us a little bit about your school and what brought you there.
Okay. Well, Cullen Middle School is basically located here in southeast Houston, Yellowstone, Scott area. And what brought me here, and I'll go back more into detail about the school. I was principal at A&M Elementary on the southwest side of Houston, HISD. I was there for about 9 years, 7 as assistant principal, and about two and a half years as principal. And had a little success there, in that under my leadership, the school did make it to exemplary. My last year there, the opportunity came up for me to see if I was a fit for this school, because I did share with a colleague of mine who was the executive principal at the time. Her name was Kim Funklin. And she asked me what were my aspirations. And I told her that I had planned one day before my career was to be a high school principal. So she said that is your desire. You really need to start looking at middle schools as a stepping stone in that direction. So that conversation actually took place about 2 months before I was approached about this opportunity. And I told them I was open to see if I was a fit for the school, and if the school was a fit for me in terms of what I can do as a leader to impact teaching and learning. And I went through the process. Dr. Greer's new strenuous screening process. And it turned out that I was fit on this campus. But Cullen Middle School is a great school. You know, I'm not just saying that because I'm the principal. I walked in, and if my answers are too long, just let me know. I walked in, and to be honest with you, this building was built in 1954. It needs a major overhaul. You know, they allowed me to come in and do some renovations, painting and stuff like that. I was able to add some lights, but I came in June 14th, so 2010, walked the building, and I was pretty much depressed about walking into this building. Because I was thinking, I remember my instructor telling me when I was a student working on my certificate for administration, what Walt Disney did when he built Disney. He had all of his architects kneel, and they kind of walk around on their knees so they can get a look at from a kid's perspective. And so when I walk in the building, I look at schools from the kids' perspective. So that's why I felt depressed. And I said, oh, these kids feel walking into this building in this condition. So I shared that with the board member, and we got some renovations going. And they're pretty much on the way. You know, the rest of the project getting complete by the $9 million project. But it's a great school, great kids. They have their challenges. When you drove in here, you see the projects right across the street, low-income housing, you know, using a common term, kids call them projects. And then on this side of the school, you see houses of our senior citizens community. So a beautiful community. You look on this side, you see one picture, and just on the other side of the school is a totally different picture. So a lot of my kids come from where? on the other side of the school, rather for low income housing. So walked in, and the first thing was to connect with the students. And I remember walking in, and there were two kids I met on the first day, and they were both 6'4". One was 6'4", one was 6'5", tall as me. And I'm like, wow, I just left elementary, so I gotta get used to this. But you know, what I found very telling about kids and about this campus is when you look in the eyes of kids, you know, and they're right there with me, so we're eye to eye. So no longer bending down to the kindergartens, I was looking eye to eye with the 8th grader. And they are still kids. They want to be loved. They want you to show concern. They want tough love. They want you to be tough on them. But they don't want you to wash your hands and throw them up and say, I'm done. They don't want that. They really don't. They may say they do, or they may give you some backlash or some barriers up to say that they're not, you know, willing to work with you. But when you look in the eyes, they tell the whole story. They're still kids. So I found I had great kids here. So, okay? I know that was kind of a lengthy answer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. When we were looking at your website, we saw something, a reference to Cullen University. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, actually I continued that from the previous administration. The principal here was named, her name was Annette Hookman. And she kind of started, you know, we have this college-bound culture that we're trying to build in schools today, getting kids thinking about college, you know, from, you know, right when they walk into kindergarten. I mean, so she started using that term, and I embraced it. I was like, it really sounds like a real university, Cullen University. So I just took it and ran with it, tied it to everything that we do. When I do call-outs to the parents, I don't say Cullen Middle School, I say Cullen University. We do morning announcements. You know, it just gives that feel that all of our kids, whether they're prepared right now or not, that's where they're going. You know, and like I tell parents and students, I said, whether you choose not to go to college, you know, choose to go to college or not, you should have that choice. You should have that choice. Not because you didn't go to college because you were not prepared, but you do have the choice. So you're prepared to go, but if you choose a different direction, that's fine. But we have to work to get you in a position to do that. So that's kind of the Cullen University is the college-bound culture.
When looking at Cullen Middle School's data, you noticed an improvement in student achievement over the past 2 years. So what do you attribute that to?
Well, I can't really speak in detail about what they did the year before I arrived. I knew Ms. Hookman when she was a science project manager, and I know that she's a strong instructional leader, just working with her in that capacity. So I'm sure that she was able to, you know, get some things going in terms of instructional strategies, and I know they were working on establishing PLCs. PLCs, professional learning communities, they're not quite where I would like them to be, coming from MIM, where it was embedded in the culture. And I don't know if I can quote Rick DeFord, you know, he was one of the founders for PLCs. Is that you know you're a PLC when you don't have to call yourself a PLC. You know. So they were not coming here, they're not quite there yet. We're still calling ourselves, we're having to call ourselves PLCs because we're not, the practices are not embedded in the culture. But I know they had started that work. They started looking at data-driven instruction. The piece that I brought with me was the assessment for learning piece. And people often confuse that with testing. You know, and I heard that a lot in this culture. You know, it's quick, we test the kids too much, we test the kids too much. We're not testing, we're assessing for the learning. You know, we're not gonna wait at 4 points or 3 points. We do a benchmark 3 or 4 times a year and see if kids have mastered the learning. So we're doing little checkpoints. Every 2 weeks, they did not get that practice down. This year it will happen. But they pretty much did it every 3 weeks. They have to be teacher-created assessments. So just looking at the growth, I think that played a large part. And it also made teachers be accountable for the learning. And I displayed the data. You know, you can compare, you can see who was moving the learning and who didn't have quite as much gains. And that sparked that conversation between teachers and students, my administrative team, and teachers. I remember doing data talks with students, because they want to know, you know, why I'm not making the kind of gains that I need to. And we didn't post failures. You know, we only posted data that we could celebrate, okay? Because we didn't want to, you know, hurt anyone's feelings. But it did make, if kids' names were not on the wall, it did make them inquire about where they were with the learning. Okay? So I think that was a big piece to answer your question, among some other things. The other thing was changing the campus culture. I'm just a big fan of highly effective schools and school reform. You know, I've studied like Doug Reeves. Anytime he has a conference, I try to go to Doug Reeves. Did a lot of work with DeFore. Another one, of course, Marzano. And they talk about a positive school culture. You know, that's so major. Kids walking in and feeling that they're wanted here, that they're needed here, welcome here, this is their home. Just trying to change that culture. It was not here when I arrived, and it's still not quite the way I would like it to be. But I think that moving in that direction, getting that positive school culture established here at Cullen, embedded in the culture, that positivity and that energy, enthusiasm is something I think they help with the gains you talk about.
Some people would say that Cullen is not performing as well as it could. How would you respond to them?
You know I know the answer to that question. For one, I don't know if you saw the sign when you walked in. My assistant principal made that sign. I gave him that slogan, and it's going to be a better sign. Well, that was his vision of it, so I left it. We're a no excuse campus, first of all. We didn't make no excuses for our shortcomings. We accept kids where they are, and we do our best to move them and grow them. I think it's our job to create an environment, again, speaking to that campus culture. And I always can do the analogy of a farm, because that's a simple one. If you don't have good soil to plant in, you can't grow anything, you know. So we have to have an environment where we can grow kids. Now, I get kids here, if I'm not mistaken, about 78, close to 80%, let me say it like that, close to 80% are reading 1 to 2 grade levels below. Kids move around a lot. We have a high mobility rate. They move. I have kids come into the school 3 times a year. You know, check out at the beginning, for whatever reason, whether it's the student or the parent, then they want to come back around after Christmas, and then when we're getting ready for standardized tests, we check out again, and then they check back in May. So all that moving around is hard to really track and monitor a kid in his learning. It's like when they come back, they have to start over, you know, because they've been in a different culture, they've been in a different instructional setting, and you don't know what they're doing at the other campus. So that it's a lot of movement. A lot of it is tied to their socioeconomic status. But that's one of the reasons why we're having to really work to try to grow kids and close up those learning gaps in a short period of time.
Okay, what discipline systems do you currently have in place to support student achievement?
And this is kind of tying into the question you asked about the growth. We approach the discipline and classroom management with a focus on engagement, high levels of student engagement. I asked my administrative team to go in and focus on the 3 things: community, alignment, rigor, which is a big growth area for schools right now. Is what does rigor look like, and engagement. So I've started facilitating conversations in my faculty meetings about how we were going to cut down on discipline first. And I said, teachers, I know from experience that, and this was the approach toward discipline in the school when I walked in, is that the administrators do it. You suspend kids, you call parents, you set up conferences, you handle the discipline. I told them no longer. That's how we would handle this. Discipline has to be, classroom management has to be a school-wide focus. Everyone has to do their part in that particular setting, that particular situation with discipline in our school. So when there's a discipline issue, I ask the teachers to handle it in the classroom. And I know that's kind of a fundamental answer. You just take care of it. But the power behind that is that you have to have that kid in the learning. And I used to tell, when I was an assistant principal, I would tell teachers, I said, if you give this kid to me, take down in my office, that's the business part of the school. He's sitting down there out of the learning. You're still responsible for his learning. And you're still responsible for when his data comes out. If it's regressive or if it's not as strong and it looked like you haven't grown the student as much as you could have, that's something you're going to have to hold yourself accountable for. And usually they take the kid back. So they're like, okay, Mr. Crook, let me see if I can work with him. So I kind of brought that attitude here to Cullen, just saying, let's try to increase the percentage of time that kids are in class and not out in the hall and out in the office and things like that. So I really honestly believe teachers try to do that. Now, were there situations where kids had to be removed because it was disruptive and we didn't want to sacrifice the learning environment? Yes, we did remove those kids and we had some intense conversations with them. But the discipline forms and the suspensions and the alternative really is not what the effective piece is in the school in terms of classroom management. It's that student-teacher relationship. And I told the teachers when I first arrived, and I did the piece on assessment for learning, the PLC piece, the data piece. I did some trainings on that. I ended the question, I remember, I said, how are you going to get these students to perform with everything that they bring to the table and all the challenges that they have from the community? The bottom line for me is, what are you going to do to get this kid to work? You can't just discard him. Say, oh, they say you don't want to do it. No, how are you going to motivate him to get him to do this work that you need done? And I think they responded pretty good.
At Cullen, how are students identified for special programs?
Let's see, let me process that. How are students identified for special programs? Well, naturally, as a process, we use a pyramid of interventions. The district has well, most school districts have a pyramid of interventions. We start with tier 1, and go to tier 2, tier 3, and vice versa. But usually it's tier 1, 2, and 3. But on the pyramid, it's wider at the bottom and it's more narrow at the top. So when we've exhausted everything, as the student work up the tier, usually the last intervention is to receive special ed services, because there may be a learning disability that student has, and that may be the problem why they're not learning, or not learning at the rate that we need. But we have a intervention assistance team, and that's something else. I kind of brought a different plan with that. What I learned in elementary as an assistant principal, if you take a group of teachers and say, I need you to be my intervention assistance team, we send you for training, and you come back and you take care of this. You put kids through the process, find out if they, what's going on with them, and let's send them, get that help that they need. But that doesn't work. That didn't work well. So what I found out, if I established an intervention assistance team, on each grade level, then it made teachers take ownership. And they had to report back to me, and this kind of developed more as I became principal. The kids that were not being successful, and what were the conversations around the student, and what did they suggest and recommend that this kid get to help him be successful.
To follow up on that, what about in terms of GT and gifted and talented and advanced academics?
Okay, I'm gonna give you the district answer now. Because to be honest with you, that's pretty much uniform around the district. We have a GT department. They have a screening process. We're assigned a GT coordinator. It's not a whole lot I can tell you about that. They test, the teachers give they give recommendations, and they take that information and they put it through a matrix, and the kids are identified as GT. That's kind of the process. So I'm not really too much hands-on with that other than who are they and where are they.
Mr. Crook, you talked about this a little bit in some of the previous questions, but I was wondering if you could go into a little bit detail and talk about how the teachers here at Cullen use assessments to inform their instruction.
Oh, that's a major, well, I'm not gonna say major, let me back up a little bit. It's not major, but it's a concern. I think the first thing we needed to do was to, like I said, have these data talks. And I gave them a lot of data, but I tried to give them meaningful data. So it had to be data that they could sit down and look at it and make sense to them, you know. So that was the beginning of it, is to simply have, first let's take a look at the data, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, look at both. And I use those terms a lot as well. It's qualitative data and quantitative data. So we take the quantitative data and we looked at that and kind of identified the areas of concern, whether by content area, by grade level, hallway, you know, proximity from the front office. I mean, you look at every aspect to try to figure out why kids are not performing based on the data. So once you do that, it's getting teachers to take ownership, responsibility, and accountability for what the data is saying. So that has to, I guess the word is transpire, back to the classroom and impact the learning is. So once those conversations, I had a data room, and I remember when I introduced that to this campus, it was embedded in the culture of the campus that I came from. But, you know, that was supposed to be an uncomfortable room. We had uncomfortable conversations in there, crucial conversations about, and it all boiled down to teacher performance. So teacher performance is tied directly to student performance. And I've said this many times because I advocate on both, on behalf of the student and the teacher. Clearly, teach students first, kids first, but teachers make it happen. They make it happen. I don't care. You can have a classroom with great kids. If the teacher is not there and the teacher is not effective, learning will not happen on the level that you need it. And I have to but clearly get that message across when we leave those data talks and we come out with a plan that this has to transpire to growing kids when you get back to your classroom.
What concerns do you have about grading?
Good question. Well, that's kind of part of the some of the training I've done with Doug Reeves and with Ford, with PLCs, that the no zero policy, and a lot of schools are still having trouble with that one. And I think particularly, well, I'm going to take just a kind of speculate that in the schools where the low income area, where there's not as much parent involvement, then you see a lot of poor grading practices. Students say he doesn't want to do it, I'm not doing it. Teacher gives him a zero. Now, you go to some more affluent school districts, and the child says, I'm not doing it, and the teacher gives a zero. Some parents are coming. They're coming, and they want to know why. Why did you call me? You know, what happened? Why did he get a zero? So teachers are less likely to give a zero. Just to speak on the school from my son attended in Johnston Middle School, HIC school, that has a heavy PLC embedded culture. They go into a no zero policy, and I see him working with that, you know, and he has to do the work, and I appreciate that. You know, they don't want that conversation from me, you know? So they're gonna make sure their kids do the work, and as a result of that, they're a very successful school. So that's something that I'm trying to embed in this culture, is the grading practices. I have some teachers, I can't believe I'm looking at report cards on 17s, you know, and 20. What can a kid do with that? You know, the 6 weeks is done for him, you know. And So I've had those conversations with them. That's a slow process that's changing. You know, I'm starting to see less zeros, and I like to eliminate them altogether because kids need to still do the learning piece. You know, whether you take points off or you give them extra time, and you get this conversation from teachers. Well, it's not fair, Mr. Crook. The other kids turn their work in on time. It has nothing to do with time. It has everything to do with learning. Give the kid, give him learning. If you give him a zero, he's done with it. He's not learning. So that's the problem.
Okay, Mr. Cook, could you describe the teacher recruitment and retention programs that you have in place?
Well, I was thinking this when I saw Carmen, when I walked in. I'm very, very happy with the process that is taking place. I did a hiring event I participated, hiring event at Delmar Stadium last week. And I was actually looking for Carmen to tell you that the candidates that I interviewed were all outstanding.
Thank you.
And just the quality of teachers that are coming forward now through the process, the screening process is really great compared to some years ago when it was just open to everyone, you know. So that is very effective, very effective. And I was trying to find you, let you know, but I was like, I talked to some great people, you know. I was like, that is awesome, you know. And I don't think, you still have to process if they're fit for your campus. It's not that they're poor candidates, they're fit for somebody's campus, but just to hear them articulate the vision for being a teacher is really great. So I think the screening process in HIZ is awesome right now. It's really getting to talk to some great people that are going to have a great impact on schools. Retention, I think that's pretty much, I kind of see retention tied to the campus culture, what the principal's vision of the school. If you can get great teachers, and I've had some success in that area, to see the vision and use the great teachers do. If you have a good, solid vision of the school, and they get to feel that you do put children first, and that is non-negotiable, and use the great teachers have that same philosophy, and they tap into your vision, they will stay. They won't go anywhere. They will stay. So I've had that opportunity to build those kind of relationships with my strong teachers, and also I look for leadership opportunities for them on the campus. And I also have this conversation at the beginning of the year. What do you want to do? Now I have some strong teachers. They wait. They're just kind of like, I'm going to retire as a teacher. I'm not looking for anything in leadership. Then I have some strong teachers who are kind of, 6, 7 years down the line, they're ready to venture out and become leaders. So I try to make that happen for them. I get them involved in everything I can. Constantly putting their names out there, especially if they're great teachers. I'm like, yeah, you can make a greater impact in a leadership position, and you have a lot to give to teachers from a different position. So that's another conversation, and usually the teachers want to stay, and they're loyal, they're committed to you as the principal.
So speaking about great teachers, how do you ensure all students have access to highly effective teachers?
I use this word a lot, man. I did play a little basketball in my day, long time ago. And it's funny how this term was just embraced just recently. It's the coaching piece. And when I talk about coaching teachers, of course I'm talking about instruction. But that analogy, the experience, I played college basketball and how I was coached and how we studied statistics and things like that, and how we studied the stats, how we looked at game tapes and videos and analyzed, evaluated our performance, the other team's performance. It all just ran together for me, as a principal. So I have a strong coaching piece here at Cullen. And with my administrative team, I'm very explicit on what I expect. And like I said, our focal point, the 4 areas were community, alignment, rigor, and engagement. And I share with my teachers that in order for them to be effective, you have to have those 4 areas, have those going on in your class. Community, just an environment where kids can come in and feel welcome, they want to come in your room, they want to work. Alignment, we all have to be aligned vertically, horizontally. That's difficult, but that's the communication piece, and me arranging those collaborative meetings, vertical teams and grade level teams. And like I said, we're still, as a campus, along with other campuses, trying to work the rigor piece and then the engagement. So if I can coach a teacher to hit those 4 areas and those specifics, I wish I had a copy of the walkthrough form. And maybe I can give that to Dr. Knowles. You can see the specific things that we look at. And when we do a feedback, a coaching feedback conference, I've shifted this thinking around, let me tell you what you need to do. You know, it's let's reflect on what happened. You know, so we sit and we reflect, and then you tell me how do you think your class went, you know. And then you kind of coach teachers, what could you have done better? And they know the answer, really. They really do. They know the answer. You may have to tweak a few things. Of course, professional development, we're constantly looking at what kind of trainings we can send them to. Sometimes I just send them around the corner to someone else's classroom. And Ms. Crook, I got this group of kids, they just giving me hell, you know. And I told them, you know, in your off period, go around the corner and take a look at them. And they're interacting, you know, behaving perfectly. Teacher expectations. You know, if you're clear on teacher expectations, then students will usually step to what you're asking them to do. So a strong coaching piece helps guarantee for me, not guarantee, but kind of assure me that I have an effective teacher in that classroom, because I am, along with my administrative team, any support staff, we're constantly coaching teachers, and that is a strong conversation piece and follow up on the feedback that I give. I'm sorry I got the long answers, guys, but that's it. I'm sorry.
Don't apologize.
What is changing about the community surrounding Cullen?
I think I could better answer that question once I'm here, a little longer than a year. It's an excellent question, and I would love to answer that, you know, with a good answer. Just looking at from the time when I walked in on June 14, 2010 to today, not a whole lot has changed in terms of the community. You talk about outside of school, right? Not a lot has changed, to be honest with you. And that's something that I'm working on, particularly if you talk about the perception of the school. That's something that has to change, and we're working on that. I think that's a slow process as we reestablish trust with the community. As they begin to trust the school again, I think you'll see some changes in that perception. Now, the community, I can't really answer that question. I haven't seen any changes, to be honest with you. I've discussed with the school board members some things that I wish I had the control over, to, you know, some things that are bad for kids that are around in this area. But I mean, there's a strong police presence for any criminal activity, but they still occur, you know. I mean, with this low income area, you know, it's just not a lot of money exchanging hands. And it's not a lot of capital in this area. There are a few businesses that are barely hanging on, you know, around this, in this community, but it's just not really a whole lot going on. In a positive way is what I'm saying, in a positive change. And I think in a negative change, I think people are still slowly leaving this community. Now, you have some people that lived here all their lives. And like I said, if you go on this side of the school where the homes are, those are my senior citizens, they're not leaving. they'll walk over to Cullen Middle School. You know, kids are out here to pee, they're not participating, and you know, they're telling they're over here on the fence over by the park, you know, and I'll come out there and they'll walk through here with me, you know. And I mean, they're like 75, 80, some of them, and they love this community. They love it, they're not leaving. And this is their home. But then again, like I said, on the other side, You do see a few new apartment complexes going up, a few. I think there may be 3 or 4, but there are probably 20 somewhere around this area that's just not up to par. You know. So people are still kind of leaving the school.
You mentioned perception. How is Cullen perceived by others?
Not too good right now. I think it's improving, and I knew that coming in. Because when I first became principal of Cullen, and I would talk to friends and other colleagues, and they would say, I heard you're principal at Cullen. What did you do? What did you do wrong? You know? And I'm like, I didn't do anything wrong. Actually, it was a promotion. You know? So that told me a lot. You know, just different people I talk to, the perception's not good. Even my parents that walk in already have their defenses up, ready to deal with something. And I have to break down those barriers and those defenses and see, look, I'm here for you. I'm here for your kid. You know, I'm not here to harm you. So I don't know what took place prior to me getting here, why they have that perception. I know the location of the school definitely has a lot to do with it. There are some elementary schools that have received new facilities. And you walk into those schools, and I know those principals, they're excellent. And it speaks of a certain environment, you know, where kids are growing. The culture is really solid for growing kids there. But when you walk into this school, you don't necessarily have the same feel. So when they leave elementary and they're transitioning to middle school, a lot of them go to other schools. One for the facility, and one because I think they have a fear of safety. You know, that kids are not safe in here. And I mean, you walk into Cullen, I'm very proud of the school, the time, the instructional time during the day. Kids are in class, they're engaged. You know, we walk the halls constantly to make sure that happens. And people do not come to see what's happening in the school a lot. They just don't. Actually, I'm gonna be very transparent with this one because this is one that I have to work on. Sometimes people that are supposed to be helping schools sometimes hurt them. And I'm gonna give you a quick scenario. There's a group called Ministers Against Crime. And they're a great group of men, clergymen from the churches in the area. Well, sometimes, you know, what they say carries a lot in this community, because churches are the pillars of this community and its schools. This is what we have, is churches and schools here. And if a minister says something about a school, then the community usually believe what that person says. But this organization has said something that were totally inaccurate about Cullen. As a matter of fact, they were having a meeting, and my chief school officer texted me and said, Mr. Crook, these ministers are talking about how out of control Cullen is. Kids are running around the halls, nobody's going to class, and they're fighting every other day, all this stuff. I'm like, where's this coming from? Well, I don't know, but one of the ministers never saw him in my school, not once, was saying all this stuff, you know. And I said, you know what? Tell them to come over here right now. You know, they were right down the street. I said, tell them to stop and come by, you know. So he came by, and all the students were in there learning, teachers were teaching. And I asked him, I said, where are you getting this? And he didn't want to tell me. So, you know, so that's another underlying issue that goes on in schools, that people don't have the best interests of students and the best interests of people in the organization at heart. So some things are fabricated. And so he received a fabrication and passed it along to a very powerful group. The second thing was there was a shooting at Worthing High School. I don't know if you guys remember that. And Cullen had nothing to do with that. And a kid posted, and he's a trouble kid. Actually, I sent him to CP. He was the one that had issues. Posted on Facebook that someone was going to bring a gun to Cullen. I'm telling you, I have great kids. I have great kids. We don't have any kind of issues like that. I'm not just saying that. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it because I love my kids. And I was so upset, disappointed, because I had 180 kids not show up the next day because of this Facebook posting. Now, it wasn't because of Facebook, but because one of the minister's granddaughter told him about the posting on Facebook. He told the media, and then everybody heard about it. So that was the worst day for attendance there to come. And in the middle of preparation for our high stakes test, the tax test, you know. So I had to go out and do some damage control. Have never had a gun here at Cullen, any kind of knife or no weapons. Now, have I had some fights? Yes. But so my son, like I said, he goes to a Blue Ribbon school. They have had fights as well, you know. So it's nothing, like I told Dr. Dance, I said, it's nothing out of the ordinary. But this picture that's being painted of the school is totally inaccurate. You see, so I'm dealing with some of those dynamics in the community when you talk about perception that I have to work with.
Okay, great. Could you tell us a little bit about the student recruitment and retention programs that you have in place?
That's a big part. That's part of marketing the school. Cullen has seen a continued decrease in enrollment every year. Even the year with me coming in. I was looking at some data where they were like at 800 students at one time, and then it went down like to 750, 700. I think not this past school year, but the year before I came, it was like, I think they hit 699 or something like that. And then when I came in, it's 580. So that's a major, significant drop. I'll be the first to tell you, my high-end kids, I mean my high-performing kids, they're in magnet programs. They're in Pin Oak and Pershing and Johnston, where my son goes. And I would be at Johnston and the kids would say, Mr. Crook, I live by color, you know. So 200 kids, I asked Student Information Systems when I first arrived to pull my list of kids that are on transfers. I had about 250 kids on transfer to magnet programs, administrative transfers, and parents are just taking them out of the community to other schools. So working with my assistant principal who works with the 6th grade, he and I have been really working to market the school and using our staff, using some of the churches. So we've been getting out to elementary schools and talking to kids about coming back to college. I think when you compare, and this is kind of on a side note, when you compare our school to other schools, other middle schools, and say, well, these schools are performing so much better than Cullen, or Thomas's, or the Addicts, you have to consider that I have 78% Tier 3 kids reading 1 to 2 grade levels below. That's my population of kids, and all my high kids are in other campuses being counted in their data. See what I'm saying? So if I had both, I'm not saying give me all the high kids, but if you're gonna call me a traditional school, then I have low, medium, and high. That's a traditional school, not just all low. You see what I'm saying? So yes, the data would be stronger if those kids were back here at Cullen, and plus my enrollment would be around 780 instead of 580 if I had those 200 kids back. So when you talk about student retention, I think that's going out. That's a marketing piece, going out. We did some community, we did a fall fun festival, and my staff jumped all over that. And we packed the school out on Saturday. They came out, and the community came out, and just that connection. And I had a lot of kids came back. A lot of kids. I had some kids at KIP. I had some across the town, and they were like, oh, this is the new color. So I got back from that event alone about 20 kids, 20 high-end kids, just from that alone. So it is a strong marketing piece when you talk about retention. Once you get them here, you have to give them a reason to stay.
You talked a little bit about this before, but how do you communicate with the different stakeholders in your zoning area?
There's a couple of things that communication you mean about color and things I may need, just kind of giving them a picture of where we are and what we're doing. I do a newsletter called the Bobcat Tracks. And they had a newsletter, I'm not sure what Ms. Hookfin called it, but it went out like every 6 weeks. So it was not, middle schools, they're not like, I did a newsletter in elementary every week. And I learned that from the principal that I worked for, you know. So I kept that going. It was a strong communication piece. But one of the things I add is that I always send an electronic copy to my teachers PDF, and I send it. I have a personal distribution list to board members, to pastors in the community, business owners, other colleagues, Dr. Dan. So I have a distribution list like that. So they stay connected, and sometimes I will get emails or calls about events coming up, or they would say, "Oh, great idea, Mr. Crook. Oh, I didn't realize this was going on in Cullen. Your kids did this, or they won that. Wow, that." So we do get that kind of feedback as a result of that particular newsletter that I send out. Then, of course, I do try to have lunches with. So I'm not here with the teachers, so I can say this. Pastors will stop by and take me to lunch, and that is great. The ones that are really active in my community. Again, I'm not going to say anything bad against the ministers against crime. I think their intentions are genuine. But one of the pastors, and I have to share this with you because this is a learning situation, he said, "Mr. Crook," and this was very profound to me, and he helped remodel my library. He brought 40 people in to remodel the library. Sand and painted, it looks almost brand new. And he said, "Mr. Crook, I don't want to be part of an organization that comes in on the first day of school, it comes in on the last day." He said, "What about the work in the middle?" And that's where he's been with me, is the work piece in the middle. It's not the first day. The first day, kids come in, you may have a few problems, and it's great that you're present. And then the last day, yes, the stuff happen, but I put some things in place to make sure that the school let out without missing it. But the real work is here, and this is where some of the preachers, they come in and say, "Mr. Crook, what do you need?" And one pastor just said, "Mr. Crook, I'm just going to take you to lunch because I know what you're dealing with, what you're working with, and some of the challenges that you're dealing with," because he has a church in the community. He deals with some of the same situations. And he just stopped by. That means the world, just to take me out of the facility to lunch and talk to this gentleman and kind of, release some things about some stress on what I'm doing. Okay.
Follow up on that. You talked about Bobcat tracks. So do you send it weekly now, or is it monthly?
No, I tried.
Figured it out.
I tried to do that weekly, but there's no way. I see now just the dynamics of middle school. Even though we don't quite have the enrollment, 200 7th graders, 200 8th graders, about 180 6th graders. That's a lot of work. If you're talking about being in the learning with kids and learning with teachers, you tell the teachers to lean in on the learning, and you have to stand there and lean with them. It's difficult to be behind your computer creating something of quality. And when I do have a plan, I did do this once or twice this year because my administrative team, they work hard just like I do. And I had them create a newsletter by grade level. So we did this twice, and they did a great job. I said 1 or 2 pages, nothing long. And then I did one for the school, which allowed me to highlight what they had put in their newsletter, and then just kind of a big overview of the school for me. So if I could get that system working, then I probably could do it once a week. I'm really shooting for once every 2 weeks.
Talk to us a little bit about the leakages between Cullen Middle School and some of the surrounding schools.
Let's see. Collaboration hasn't happened on the level that I'm accustomed to. And I was reflecting a minute on my experience as an elementary school principal, where I had a lot of success in the school. In the latter years, not at the beginning when I was an assistant principal, but in the latter years, especially when we evolved from knowing and doing and being a PLC, when we were being a PLC, that collaboration piece was really strong at that point. So the area elementary schools, we worked very closely together. Whether it was on trainings, leadership trainings, the principals, we would see them and we would collaborate. We worked budgets together, But here, it's just you're working in isolation, And I think a lot of it has to do with where schools are on that journey to being a PLC, So a lot of schools operate in reactive mode and not in being proactive, you know, looking further down the road in this particular area. Even color. That's a coaching piece, is that we're still kind of in reactive mode. You know, we're in this emergency situation and we're just reacting to fires. And that's the part of the culture that we're trying to change. So not a strong collaboration piece here. Schools, middle schools work in isolation right now. I mean, we'll see each other at the principals meetings and we'll talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that we have on our campuses and share a little bit right there. But that's about that's the gist of it. You know, the elementary school I came from, principals would come to my school, I would go to their school, you know, that kind of thing. You know, we shared resources and just kind of helped each other out. But again, that was a lot of work in the PLC.
So I noticed you mentioned a lot about hands-on PLC, but is there, I know we don't even have, but there's any vertical interaction?
I think any vertical action, as you say, happening is a result of my commitment to my feedback. That's something that I believe in. Cullen feeds Jack Yates High School. And the question I asked parents, the question a reflective question I state to them, I said, do you think every kid is a fit for Yates, Jack Yates High School? And my answer to that is no. Every kid is not a fit for Jack Yates High School, no more than every kid is a fit for Bel Air High School, Cashmere High School. I think parents have to research and find out what's a good fit for their kids. So I do support and I do push for my students to go to Yates High School because I think there's a strong tradition, and a lot of parents that have kids at Yates they're still tied to Yates. They went to Cullen, you know. So I'm trying to reestablish that relationship, but with an instructional piece. Now the coaches, they still collaborate because they want the football team and the basketball team. They want the players to go there. But we have to establish a strong relationship around learning. So I'm constantly an advocate and constantly promoting Yates High School. You know, my kids are on there, yes, but they're kind of in the same situation I am. A lot of my high-end kids and maybe high-end kids from Ryan usually go to a magnet program in high school. And they're suffering with the image problem as well. Now, I've been to Yates a few times this year. It's a beautiful facility. I mean, it's very nice, very well maintained. A lot of great things can happen there. I know they're in transition with leadership right now, but I see a lot of potential at Yates, and that's the kind of message I share with parents. So, not a lot of action happening, especially because they're in transition. I was hoping to establish something with the new principal that arrived there, but as we have it, he didn't stay. And I do know the principal that's there now, and she was the middle school principal at Flint. And so in other words, we know each other well. So I'm hoping to get that connection strong.
What are the biggest challenges at Cullen?
Oh, wow. You know I have the answer to that question. I just want to make sure I try to frame it right for you. A few things, and I'm gonna state them, but maybe not in that order. I think one is more of a priority, and I just don't have time to put them in the order that I know. But in terms of priority, definitely the image and perception of the school is a challenge, because again, it speaks to I would love to have my kids back here at Cullen. You know, that 200, 250 that's choosing to go somewhere else. I think we would do a great job, you know, and they're finding this out slowly. So definitely the image. I can't do anything about the location. You know, if I could wave a wand and put this community in the homes that they want to have, everybody make the kind of money that they want, you will see this culture of this school change as well. You will see kids more confident. You will see kids with higher levels of self-esteem and know that they can do whatever they want academically. But because of those challenges and because of those obstacles that they have to overcome in the community, then a lot of that is brought here into the school.
Hey, don't mean to interrupt, but I need changes to the building on these 2 units. We'll be real quiet.
You want to go to the main office. Actually, we're doing some taping right now. So the main office is right through that door, and then make a left.
All right, thank you.
All right. So, you know, that's a big challenge is the socioeconomic situation that kids are facing and walking into this building. They bring a lot of challenge. And I'm not saying that we don't address that. We do the best we can as a school. And we don't take that as an excuse. But that is a major challenge. And then the teachers, I have to speak about my staff. Effective schools research says that if you want schools to be highly effective and you want them to start moving in the direction where kids are making a lot of academic gains, you have to turn over your staff coming in as a new principal. Some people argue that you have to do it all at once. Myself personally, I think I try to do it in thirds. You know, I've turned over about 15 positions this year. And the number may be a little smaller, and then it may be bigger next year. But I anticipate that because I've done this before. I've gone through that process of turning over and the entire staff in the school. And I remember when we became a really strong school in the elementary school, about 99% of our teachers, I was a part of the hiring process for those teachers. You know, I partnered with the principal when I was an assistant principal. And then when I became principal, it's a major difference working with a staff that you have hired. Major difference. So I'm very pleased with the staff I have. I still think that we have to build, that there's a lot of work in building capacity in the teachers here. There's still a lot of work there. And then some people that could not take hold of the vision and not want to do the kind of work that I want to do with learning, have made the choice to move on. You know? So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. If they want to find a better fit campus for what they want to do, then I'm definitely support that. And that's allowing me some time to maneuver. Just a quick example, I had one teacher that left. She was a content mastery teacher. And I hired her actually, because she is, I think, is a better fit for elementary. So she's going to elementary. That one position has allowed me to make changes. And you talk about seats on the bus. You know, you got some people that had to get off the bus, but that's allowed me to move people around on my campus based on my observations that would be more of a fit for them in terms of teaching positions. You know, just that one person, we've had some major movement on the campus. So teachers, that's a challenge, is that coaching them to greatness. Just coaching them to greatness and making the learning happen in the classroom.
Well, Mr. Crook, we want to say thank you for
that's
taking
it?
this time. I think that's it, and we have about 5 minutes to spare. But what I do want to ask you is what you would really like to learn from this study. Now that you've had an opportunity to hear questions from us, what is it that you seek to find with us doing this study?
Okay, I wish I brought my note tablet with me. I know I talked to Dr. Lowry about it. I have it in my office.
We can wait.
Can y'all wait? I was jotting those notes down that day we met.
Yeah, I remember.
Let me go grab it right
Absolutely,
quick.
we can wait.
Okay.
Because